It will incentivize companies to spend money here in Alberta on emissions reductions investments specific to their projects without burdensome regulation or government choosing winners or losers.
Danielle Smith and the Alberta government have delivered a knockout blow to Mark Carney and the Liberal government's eco-mentalism. Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. A lot of people were wondering why it is that Danielle Smith made the comment about, after meeting with Mark Carney, about how she's feeling optimistic. And I told everybody at the time that it's probably just her speaking to the people on the ground. And they should not overthink it like the far left wants everybody to do. We should be looking at it with more clear mind, clear focus. And let's give Danielle credit for being both diplomatic. She's going to make a great prime minister one day, and extremely sharp, right? She's a smart woman. So between those two situations, she just said a very neutral, tame statement. And the far left, of course, being the people that they decided to try to manipulate that situation. Now we come forward a couple of days, and I think we can see where Danielle Smith was coming from as she makes an announcement talking about Alberta's what they call the THIER system. She'll tell you what that means as she goes through the announcement. But I want everyone to hear this because it is a clear and absolute destruction of the eco-mentalist agenda of the far left. And I will get into, I know there are people out there that don't approve of this position because they don't think that carbon is a problem. We're going to get into that. But before we do, I want to encourage everybody to like, comment, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. I would really like to grow this channel. So if you like the content, subscribe, share it with your friends, share it with all of your network. Okay, let's get into this.
For almost 20 years, our technology innovation and emissions reduction, or THIER system, has shown the world that you can cut emissions and grow the economy at the same time. Today, it stands as the foundation of many of the technologies that are allowing us to make the case for lower emissions, yet high-quality, stable, and reliable energy products. Covering 60% of Alberta's emissions, THIER backs the technologies our industries need to compete globally. Since 2019 alone, we've invested $1.8 billion from the THIER Fund into geothermal, hydrogen, energy storage, methane reduction, and carbon capture projects.
Okay, so to recap, Alberta has a carbon tax, what you and I will know is a carbon tax, and it's called, the system itself is called TIER, Technology Innovation Emissions Reduction, and it has been operating for almost 20 years. And I know from my comments that a lot of you have already talked about how then the Liberal government shouldn't be worried about it. What I want you to see is that how this investment of over 20 years has now made it possible for Alberta and the rest of Canada to tell the eco-mentalists to be silent. Because she's going to make it clear here, but this is the kind of thing that is going to reduce the Liberal argument, the eco-mentalism, to nothing. They're going to be back to talking about composting and whether or not we're recycling in high schools. And at least they will leave the rest of us alone. We can start to get back to living a decent lifestyle.
To get into a bit more detail, overall emissions have also been reduced by 8.7% since 2015, and oil sands emissions intensity has declined by nearly 30% per barrel since 2012, while production has increased by 96%. Alberta had the greatest absolute reduction in emissions between 2022 and 2023 of any Canadian province or territory, reducing emissions by 2.1 million tonnes. We also reached our target to reduce our methane emissions by 45% from 2014 levels 3 years early. THIER invests money back into businesses, lowers operating expenses, and keeps Alberta in demand around the world.
Obviously, those are huge amounts of reductions in the kind of emissions that the Liberal government has been complaining about. She's even talking about methane emissions. And that has big ramifications for the world. That has massive ramifications for the world. Now, to make it clear to people who might be a little bit convoluted or might not quite get it, you hear, for example, H2O. We talk about the molecules of water. We call it H2O, and that's hydrogen 2. The little 2 becomes two molecules of hydrogen, 1 molecule of oxygen, and that creates a raindrop or water or mist or something to that effect, depending on how much of it, of course, you have. The same idea holds true for capturing of this emissions. Methane goes out, but if you attach something to it, now in the case of the carbon, what they do is they make it heavy. Make it heavy, and then they pump it. It gets so heavy that it collects. They make it cold, so it turns to liquid. They pump it, then they fire it down into the ground, and everybody's happy with the way that that transpires. This is the kind of thing that carbon capture does. Now, the Norwegians do it out in the middle of the ocean, and they have done it so successfully that they have taken on other countries' emissions, like France, for example. However, for Canada, this is going to have ramifications that are not only going to spill out across this country, that are not only going to change the fundamental face of the Liberal Party and silence the environmentalists forever. It's going to be the kind of technology that Canada can export to the rest of the world.
We're looking at it a little like a recycling program. The dollars that the companies pay into THIER will be recycled into investments that will reduce their own emissions on their own sites. Something like the Pathways project is an example. Up to 90% of a facility's compliance obligation could be met with this change. It will incentivize companies to spend money here in Alberta on emissions reductions investments specific to their projects without burdensome regulation or government choosing winners or losers. These amendments will give oil sands companies a new choice. Instead of sending their compliance payments to government, they can choose to direct those dollars into building major emissions reduction projects, again, like the Pathways Alliance Carbon Capture Utilization and Storage Network.
When you heard Danielle Smith say the government won't be picking winners and losers, that's a direct jab at Mark Carney and Bill C5 and how they think that they can just cherry pick whoever is on their side and whoever is on their, giving them their votes to what jobs will go up. And we all know that right now the 5 that Carney picked are already almost done anyway, and that it's all just a sham. However, Danielle Smith has just fired a salvo over that Bill C5 and indicated that it won't matter what Carney has to say, because in Alberta, these companies are going to be investing in what we'll call, for this argument, emissions capture, because it's carbon capture right now that's running, and they've captured some methane. But ultimately, of course, we will be able to capture all of the emissions by allowing this investment. You see, what started 20 years ago is, holy moly, we don't really know what we're doing in Alberta to get this stuff up and running, is now a system in place around in the globe where we know that it's functioning and capturing the carbon. Now, there's a lot to say. Okay, so first of all, I get it. There are people out there that don't think we need to have a carbon concern. There's all kinds of that. And I, to much of the degree, I totally agree with you. Like, to much degree, I don't think that we had to be worrying about it. However, we have a bunch of people who don't understand the science, who only hear the fear, who only vote with the terror that the Liberal government instills into them. These eco-mentalists, De Bruzen, Guilbeault, Carney, who wrote an entire book on it. Okay, so here the Alberta government and the industry that's in Alberta, the oil industry in Alberta, has developed a system where they can capture those emissions, meaning that there's no reason to pay an industrial carbon tax because we have captured all of the emissions. There's no reason to have to worry about whether or not the federal government can install a pipeline because we have captured all of the emissions. There's no reason to have to limit how much production Canada does because we have captured all of the emissions. Ultimately, you can put the cap anywhere you want because we have captured all of the emissions. We are operating this system at a zero net point, or a net zero, as you like to call it, the Liberal government. We don't have to get the federal government's permission to invest in carbon capture or any emissions capture. What you are worried about, the Liberal government, has been accomplished. And now, by allowing these companies to invest in new systems and allowing these companies to invest in the development and the technology of it, it will expand its way out. We will soon be able to say that it's capturing the sulfur dioxide that is the big problem with coal. Maybe they'll be able to say that it's capturing nuclear waste. I don't know, like how far it will go. But I do understand that where it has gone thus far has permitted the industry in Alberta, the oil industry, to say to the government of Mark Carney that we don't need any help from you. We are going to take these taxes that we pay, but rather than pay them as taxes, we're going to pay them we're going to invest them into our own technology. So now all of a sudden we have people who are getting more jobs because there's new industry. We are getting more jobs in the scientific fields because this is what we're talking about, molecules and connecting and joining and unjoining and all of the things that go along with that. We, of course, will be able to lead the way because this is a system that also requires a lot of refrigeration. It's Canada, it's northern Canada, it's quite cold. All of the things that the Liberal government is complaining about are gone. And this, of course, is why Danielle Smith was not too worried about it. She probably got Mark Carney to agree to this system without him understanding exactly how it was going to play out and destroy any argument the Liberal Party might have. Now you just have the Liberals versus Conservatives. One wants you to keep more money in your pocket and one doesn't. Which one do you think people are going to vote for? Industry, development, getting things out of the way. These are the kinds of things that people know is what's required. And the Liberal government is about to, just fall over. Because they have no fear to drive home now. The technology aspect of the carbon capture or the emissions capture is to the point now, the development now, that they can come forward to the government of Alberta and they can say, listen, we have these systems. We know that they work. We know how much they capture. You heard some of the numbers coming out of Danielle Smith and how those are leading the way in Canada. So not only will these companies be able to take more money and invest them into another industry that will essentially, like she said, treat it like it's a recycling, but they will be able to tell the Liberal government that there's nothing to fear. And so you can get out of the way, you can leave your legislation wherever it is, because we are operating in a net zero and we don't need your permission. And therefore, everything that you want to terrify us with, everything that you think you're going to control us with, is gone. The whole argument is gone. Now, I tell you right now, if you don't believe in carbon capture, if you don't believe that carbon is a concern, that's neither here nor there. The compromise of this carbon capture has allowed for Canada to now silence the eco-mentalists, and I tell you that it's worth every penny. Further, we will now be able to take this technology. Some person in one of these industries, in one of these companies is going to say, well, if we go ahead and put this in Brazil, we can also make a little bit of money. It won't be long until people decide what they can do with that carbon. It won't be long until they figure out how to do more with it, capture more molecules with it, and save all of the other things, like save how much money and generate how much money. It will not be long. This is the nature of technology. This is the kind of thing that we have to be talking about. It won't be long until somebody figures out a way to attach to the tailpipe in your car. It won't be long until somebody figures out how to put it onto a jet fighter. It won't be long. Therefore, all we have to do is just allow the industry to continue to chase it down, because now they have the money to instead of paying it as taxes, they're paying it into research and development. They're paying it into finding ways to solve these problems. Ultimately, those industries will begin to feed themselves. And how that lays out with the government and taxation and all the rest of it with Alberta seems to be fine, because it means jobs. Every time I say the word investment, or not like the Liberal government means investment, where they're taking every penny they have from you and doing nothing with it. These companies are going to be saying because they're capitalist systems, they're going to want results. They're going to want production. They're going to want to see things moving along. I mean, anybody who's ever worked a job understands what the upper ups are going to want to be looking for. It's not going to be like the Liberal government, empty, hollow words and using investment like it's some sort of a cudgel. It's going to be where we put these in because we want to get a return on our investment. And that return on our investment will mean that we can move these pipelines up into Churchill, that we can move these pipelines everywhere we need to go. We can capture the carbon, we can capture the methane, we can capture all of the things that everybody complains about. And now they have nothing to complain about. Now they're happy that we are capturing it. And they can go back to worrying about how much plastic is into the system, or they can go back to worrying about how come it is that aluminum cans are, whatever it happens to be. Let them go worry about something else. The oil industry, the mining industry, these industries will get up and running and start to boom and explode. On top of that, the carbon capture technology will now also be able to be exported to the rest of the world. So on top of buying Canadian natural gas, on top of buying Canadian fossil fuels, you will also be able to buy Canadian technology that will allow you to keep your environment clean as a whistle. Now, I get that there are countries out there that don't worry about it, but that's not the point. The point of the matter isn't whether or not the world is prepared for that right now. The point of the matter is that now the Liberal government has nothing to say. And I'm sure that Danielle Smith must have got Mark Carney, because the investment from Brookfield into carbon capture must have got Mark Carney to agree with it at that meeting. And she said, I'm feeling optimistic, because now she's going to have 6 or 7 jobs ready to go that are all going to be hinged on the fact that they can capture all of the carbon, that they have all of this. I mean, she must have known. This isn't something that just occurred to her last week. When she met with Carney, she must have known that she was going to make this announcement. I think it's great. And I believe that someone like DeBruzen right now is probably digging deep into the ice cream. But you can let me know what you think down in the comments. I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you all for listening. I'll talk to you next time.